Okay, so this question, or at least a similar one, was asked earlier in the course as well, and it's come up again, which is great because I did say let's put that off until a little bit later, where it relates more strongly to the exercise and is demonstrated a little bit more strongly, I think, as well. So the question is about, do we turn our knees and our ankles while we're working on the belt meridian? And this also ties into some of the other exercises and movements that we've already done, and even in other sets of Qigong practices as well. There's some general principles here, and I guess that's one of the great things with different exercises. Different principles come more obviously to the fore, and when you then get a chance to explore them and understand them in one context, you then understand them more in other contexts where they may not be quite as obvious. So, because what happens when we twist our body, it does put some force down into our body, into other parts of our body, down into our legs, and this may even be uncomfortable. So I think where it may have come up earlier was in expanding the body space. When we're doing this, you feel not just a twist in your upper body, but this transfers down into your legs as well, and you feel a little bit of stretching and pulling to the sides of your knees as you do this. This becomes much more obvious when we're working on the belt or the sash, because if we worked on this and turn our knee and our ankle, it helps if you really, I'm going to tilt this down a little bit more so you can see my feet a bit more. I think you'll be able to see it there. Yeah, so you know, you can obviously see things more clearly when you exaggerate it or go more to the extreme. So if I turn, and you can try this, turning as you do this, and you'll find, wow, that feels like an easier movement. Yeah? And it is easier in some ways, but where is it sending the force, the stimulation of the twist? What's happening is, as we do this, we are dissipating some of that force and just letting it to flow and be released. Sometimes that's fine, sometimes that's something that we might want to do, but other times we're actually wanting to use that force, that twisting force, and send that stimulation specifically to where we want it to go. And so in this case, as we work with the belt or the sash meridian, ideally we keep our knees and our ankles relatively still. That doesn't mean they have to be completely still. It's okay to let them move a little bit naturally, but for the most part, they're basically going to stay still. And then when we do this movement, you'll feel that force, that stimulation from the twisting come very specifically into this area around the waist. Whereas if you come up onto the ball of your foot, you find that twisting stimulation is released. So, short answer, yes, keep your knees and your feet pretty still, you know, pretty much where they are, and twist to focus the force in around the waist, around the belt or the sash. And as part of that, keeping the knees relatively still, again, there can be some natural movement. You will feel some twisting down into your knees and your ankles as well. And what this does is, as we stimulate the belt or the sash, we also actually stimulate the connective tissue that wraps around the knees, wraps around the ankles. So our aim is not to reduce the feeling of that twisting and pulling by adapting and moving our body. Our aim is to feel that twisting and pulling and to focus it to where we want it to go. The main focus is going to be around the waist, but to some degree this is also going to go to the knees and the ankles. Actually, interestingly enough, this same stimulation will, as we do this movement, it will move into the elbows, the wrists, and so on. It's much more subtle. We'll feel it much more obviously in the knees and in the ankles. So, if you do find that starts to become too uncomfortable, well, it's a case of not pushing yourself as far. It's not a matter of then turning your feet and your knees. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that's useful. Again, you can identify the same principle being used in other exercises that you may have already done within other sets. So one example of this that I think most of you have done the 12 rivers, I think, is in turning and gazing, where we keep our knees and our feet relatively still, and we do this to concentrate that twisting stimulation into our body. We're working things a little bit differently this time. We're not sending it into the center of our body in the same way, but same sort of principles are at play.